Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a real honor to welcome to the program someone whose work I have appreciated for years. Yes. He first, maybe you saw them on Tim and Eric's Awesome Show, or Decker, or On Cinema at the Cinema, and now Mr. America. Tim Heidecker, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me time during there's so much for you to talk about, I'm sure.
What do you mean?
Insane. Well, there just seems to be a lot going on, a lot of activity in the news.
Would you say? Just a little bit.
I don't know. It's crazy. But thank you for giving me this opportunity to shamelessly plug my garbage.
I'm going to tell you that I have not been this excited to see a movie since Skyfall was announced. Now, Skyfall turned out to be not good. I went to it, like, for me at that time when my kids were young, to go and take 3 hours to watch it. I was really bummed. But I am so psyched to see your movie. We're gonna play the trailer.
Okay.
This is so up, I think, this audience's alley.
Yeah.
But here it is.
All the chips are in on this. Everything's on the line financially, emotionally. Tim Heidecker. And I think we have a very good chance of winning. I'm running for San Bernardino District Attorney.
Oh, okay.
I'm coming out here talking to voters.
Oh, okay, for DA.
Yes, for District Attorney. I've said that 3 times now. You want an outsider to come in and shake things up because San Bernardino has gotten to be so corrupt. All these numbers, you see that it's just up, and that's all crime. If you commit a crime on my watch, you're going to jail forever. That's the community we want to create.
In large sections of San Bernardino County, Mr. Heidecker is persona non grata.
You had no right to be here after what you did.
I have permission from First Amendment.
He is perceived as a murderer who got away with it.
He disobeyed me, it's murder!
See that justice is done. Convict this individual.
As far as the DA goes, this Rossetti has turned out to be a total rat. And I don't know how you find these people, if you elect them or not, but maybe he'll have some competition next time. Hey, Rossetti! Oh, Vincent Rossetti, District Attorney in San Bernardino, is trying to kill me. It's attempted murder happening right here.
I think Tim's running for DA because he just wants to get revenge.
I am District Attorney Vincent Rossetti.
What's happening with the GoPro?
It's GoFundMe. I got it set up. Most of the time, GoFundMe is for people who are like sick or poor or starving. I really shouldn't technically be doing this, but...
He's running for district attorney, which is not going to really happen because he's not a lawyer. He doesn't live in San Bernardino.
Hey, Greg, stay out of my movie. Now that the race is tightening, can we put this in your window?
We see the rat beginning to cower.
He's hiding in some rat hole. He has to answer for his crimes. Come on. It's starting to feel real.
It's not gonna cut it.
Knowing that it's only a few steps away. If I'm not on the ballot, how am I supposed to compete?
He doesn't have a chance.
From becoming not only district attorney, but hopefully even higher. I hope I have your vote.
That looks so awesome.
Sounded good. I wasn't. It sounds like a good trailer. I'm just listening to it.
It's one of those movies that I feel like you don't even have to see. You can just listen to the whole movie, and that's it. Right. So tell us. And I should say, like, I watched, obviously I haven't seen the movie. I've just seen these clips. And folks, it's released today on all the major streaming platforms.
Right.
But I see, like, a little bit of Mike Cernovich in there.
Yes.
In the moments, like, where, you're holding the selfie stick and claiming that you're being attempted murder. There's Trump in there to some extent. I mean, tell us, like, I mean, I
know. Where do we start? How do we get into this is the question you're circling around.
Exactly.
How do we approach this? There's so many angles, so many ways to get in. All I can do is try to help.
All right. Well, tell us for those folks who aren't familiar with On the Cinema and At the Cinema, just give us the arc of how the movie, like, sort of like, the basic synopsis.
Yeah. So let me try if I can do it. I should be better at this, but I'm not. We've been doing On Cinema for a while. It's basically like Siskel and Ebert, except, well, in that case, those guys didn't seem to like each other either, but it's sort of this soap opera that's been going on for years, where we sort of glibly talk about movies, but really it's a device to tell just crazy stories about my character, who's always kind of getting caught up in some scheme or some pyramid scheme or scam, or and he's just a pretty bad guy who naturally dovetails into the sort of Trump wave and becomes a Trump supporter. And I'm making sure I'm still in the air. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can still hear you.
Okay, good.
No, of course.
You know when you do those calls and suddenly it's just so quiet and you're like, I think I'm just talking to nobody right now.
Well, I can't assure you that there's anybody besides me who is listening, but I'm here.
Just every 30 seconds, give me a or
all right, I'll give you those. Or just a beep. Maybe we'll just do a beep or something.
Boop. You are still live. So anyway, my character had eventually gotten in trouble with the law for putting on an EDM festival where he handed out vaporizers which had poisonous content in them, which ended up killing 19 teenagers.
Now we should be clear.
This was before. Yeah, I know. This was done before any of this stuff showed up in the news.
Do you think that they got the idea to use tainted vape stuff from hearing about your movie?
I'm certainly not going to speak on the record about that. That seems incriminating. But no, I mean, I think Greg and I are always kind of paying attention to some of the subculture stuff going on and noticing when things. I know Greg a few years ago was really irate about these EDM festivals where kids were overdosing, and it seemed very unsupervised. And
right,
I think we tapped into that, and also vaping was just popping up everywhere, and we were kind of just laughing at the silliness of it. But those two things kind of crossed paths. And my character was put on trial. He ended up defending himself and technically we had a hung jury, which appeared as a 5-hour mock trial that appeared on Adult Swim that people can watch. And the result of that was that he decided to run for district attorney of San Bernardino, which is where the trial took place, to oust the current district attorney who tried him as a revenge campaign. So that's the backstory that sets it up for.
And let me just be clear with so that people understand it. So the storyline went along on the show, and then it just sort of jumped mediums into the documentary. How is there a story how do you explain? Do you even address that in the context of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. It's complicated. We didn't set out to make a movie that was going to come out this way. We kind of went off and said, we'll just make another piece of media in the way that the trial existed on Adult Swim. We decided to take it from the perspective of if a young filmmaker followed these guys around, mostly the stuff we make in the show is sort of made by us or made by our characters. And we said, it'll be interesting to see how these people would look from an outsider's perspective. And so we created a fictitious filmmaker that would follow us around, and then sort of did our best to set it up for the audience. And we ended up making this thing that felt really funnier than we thought it was going to be, and more kind of it felt, kind of, I hate to say the word important. Also, I'll say the word very important.
Right. It's 2 words.
It just felt timely, and maybe that it could play outside of just the audience of the show. Which we're kind of seeing that's happening. Although, some people are going to miss it, are going to miss what we're doing. But we set it up in the movie to kind of explain who these characters are. But yeah, so it's kind of doing two things. On one level, it's kind of this character study. It's kind of a political satire. It's a look at how candidates now can probably scoot by without very little experience or without very little aptitude for being in the elected office. But it also shows, like, the comments we've gotten from people that have seen it were like, it was kind of comforting because my character, not to give anything away, my character loses and fails throughout the entire movie. Like, it's never presented as like, oh no, this bad guy is winning, because it sort of was like a comfort food movie for people that want to see how things ought to be. Maybe, some people said it was nice to see this sort of Trumpian, boorish dope lose, throughout the movie. So it's working on that level. And then for the fans of On Cinema, it's chock full of, references and it plays into the narrative of that show on a bigger level as well.
Have you, it's particularly the On Cinema and then obviously into the movies gets very directly, I guess, associated with the politics of the day. Have you always been, has your work always been sort of politically oriented? I mean, how did you start? Did you start as a stand-up?
Me? No. Eric and I started, we went to film school together and made a lot of short films and kind of artsy kind of things, and little animations. And so we came up that way. We were not political. I don't think, in some ways our show was a little political in that it was very satirical of culture and the corporate, mass marketed hell mall world that we live in. But not, we sort of went the other direction from, the Daily Show kind of commenting on stuff of the day.
Right.
But I don't know. I think in the past 5 to 6 years, I've always been interested in politics and found it important to at least shape my life. But it stayed out of my work. But as listen, the past 5 or 6 years have been insane, and almost it feels almost impossible to divorce it from at least my own creativity. And some people aren't interested in that, but it's kind of just the direction things go. But in this movie, people note that we never say the word Donald Trump, and yet it's all over the place.
Right.
So it's not only on our minds, but it's on everybody's minds. And I think artists right now, it's sort of like it would be almost weird to not bring it into your work in some way. So here we are.
And you went to the RNC with Vic Burger too, didn't you? Didn't you take him down there?
We went. I dragged him down there by his curly little head. Said, "You do this. You get it. You go talk to Alex Jones." No, we went to both of them. Yeah, we just went down there with a couple cameras, and I remember he did get to talk to Alex Jones. He got up to him and was asking him about why Chubby Checker isn't in the Hall of Fame. He didn't know what to say to that.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
How did you hook up?
I don't know what I would say.
How did you and Vic hook up?
Well, this is convenient to talk about Vic because he was an early fan of On Cinema, and I noticed him. He was making these music videos about characters on Cinema, like these little and full songs that were like about characters from the show, and they were very rudimentary. The songs were actually really good because he's like, I think first and foremost a really good songwriter, believe it or not. But he put these videos up, and we loved them. And it was still early days with that show, and people weren't making that much. Because this community that watches that show, they make a lot of content. Like they make a lot of sort of subsidiary content of the show. They make, art and posters and music and stuff like associated with the show. I don't know what to compare it to. I'm sure there's, some other fandom thing that this is like. But
like maybe people paying right-wing celebrities to do cameo videos to bother other.
In this
that
environment.
sort of thing can happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, or it's like Star Trek or something, you know, where
Right.
people like are, you know, live in these worlds, this universe. But I also found out he was from my hometown, or sister town I'm from Allentown. He's from Bethlehem. So we got in touch, and he started making stuff for us. And then he went off on his own path. And I've always been trying to, you know, sort of mentor him as I've been mentored by, you know, people like Bob Odenkirk, who found us. Try to give, what do they say? Pay it forward.
Sure.
Do the pay it forward thing. So yeah, that's me and Vic.
The thing I really like about the comedy you do is it really, it doesn't feel like you at all care. Well, I don't want to say care, but that
I know
that
what you
you're
mean.
just not too concerned about the audience getting it on some
Right.
level. And
Yeah.
that's sort of the you know, back when I was in comedy was sort of the school of comedy that I came from. I mean, it didn't work out well for me, but you seem to make it work. And I mean, I mean,
It's a weird.
talk about that a little bit. And I wonder also,
Yeah.
I'm curious too, because, you know, you're about 10 years younger than me. And when you guys came out of film school, there was, that was really sort of like at the beginning of, I mean, there was, you know, YouTube and just other video online, which didn't exist, you know, when I basically came up. And there was a lot of outlets
Right.
for that.
Yeah. Let me take the first question first.
They're related, Tim. They're related.
Yeah, they are related. I'm going to see if I can just transition from one to the other without you even noticing.
Okay.
We're finding this whenever, you know, I agree. When we're making stuff, I usually, you know, if it's me or Eric or if it's me or Greg, we're really just making stuff for ourselves and for each other to laugh. And that's how we just don't think about the audience, you know, ever. And we're not trying to not make anyone laugh. We're just doing what we think is funny and not doing focus groups about, you know, what's funny these days, you know. So what happens is you get a lot of people that, as a lot of cult-y comedy works, you know, you get things like when I was a kid, Mystery Science Theater was a big thing for me, where I felt like they were in my brain. They were making me laugh, and they were just dialed into what I thought was funny, or something like Spinal Tap. It was so specific and so well executed, and you know, that's the kind of fans we have, who are just really just take it very personally and really connect with it. But when we put something like this out into the world and it gets out into the mainstream, where you have big, you know, mainstream outlets reviewing it, you realize that, oh, there is not an appetite for this in a large part. Like, you know, there's somebody watched the movie and reviewed it and said it was laugh free. And it was not, and it was like, you know, intolerable. And how dare they, you know, that kind of attitude. And it's something I can't really do anything about, but it is funny that, you know, we're never trying to make something for a mass audience, not because we don't want a mass audience. We would love it if we just had, you know, we were the most popular thing, but we just never want to sacrifice, you know, what we want at the core of what we want to do. And so that's where it comes out. But for the people that love it, you know, it connects to, I don't really understand why, or I don't understand how, I mean, to me, I watch and go, this is just funny. It's a comedy. There's, you know, it's basically a bad guy and he's slipping on a banana peel for 90 minutes, like core, you know, comedy concepts. It's not that it's not that crazy to me, but apparently it is. And then this is a little more clunky to go into your second question, which is, yes, we've been able to directly, and this is partly why we're able to have an audience, where we put this movie out on Wednesday in theaters, in like 120 theaters, and, you know, thousands of people came out and saw it, and it like did well. And the Magnolia, who put it out, was like, hey, we had a good night last night. Like, your fans came out and they had a blast. And so you can exist out there as a fringe comedian or as sort of a alternative comedian or something and do okay, because I don't know. I think like the idea of sort of a mass, like popular mass culture person especially in comedy seems kind of harder to figure out. I don't know if you saw that clip that was going around. It was the VMAs this year.
No.
And oh, Sam, this is the craziest thing. I didn't watch who watches the VMAs that we know? Like, nobody.
I was not aware that it was still going on, but I will take your word for it.
Well, they had this comedian come out to host the VMAs, okay? The host of the VMAs was this guy, and I'm going to say his name wrong, but it's like Salvador Pasquale, or he was like this kind of Andrew Dice Clay kind of comedian, like a very Italian Jersey, dressed like a guy. He's walking down the street kind of deal, like real. And the thing is, he's a very popular comedian. He's got he's sold out Madison Square Garden, and he's on Netflix with a special, and he goes on the Today Show. But he came out to host this thing, and you could tell right away that most of the people in that room did not know who he was. And you got to watch it. It's crazy. He starts going into like, just so you know, MTV has set up a safe space for people who are going to be triggered. And like that's kind of stuff. It's wild. And the VMA, especially the artists, like whoever, I couldn't tell you.
Hold on, we got a little clip of it. Let's play. It's Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah,
Scalco.
Yeah.
Okay.
And God bless him. I don't have anything. But it was sort of that thing that like is who knows who's even famous anymore. Like,
right.
You know what I always love?
No, that's
so
true.
fractured.
That is. I mean, I want to play this clip of him, but. Well, let's play this clip and then we'll talk about that phenomenon, because that to me, I think is that dynamic is what I think has been so helpful to comedy and to just broadly to entertainment. But here, hold on, let's just hear this for a second.
MTV, what they're doing is they notice that we're living in ultra sensitive time, right? So if you feel triggered, or you feel offended by anything I'm saying up here or anything the musical artists are doing, they're providing a safe space backstage where you'll get some stress balls and a blankie. And also, Lil Nas X brought his horse, horse is backstage, which will double as an emotional support animal. So if you'd like to talk to your ushers, they will send you back to where that's happening. Personally, I would remove you from the arena, put you in your car, and send you home, but they opted with the safe space.
Yeah, I
will defend Dave Chappelle till the day I die. But that's what I like about this. I just have to say is every time something like this does something, we both critique them from the left, I guess, and then we go into the last form of acceptable like ethnic comedy, which is, hey, I'm a goodbye asshole.
Well, no, anti-Italian racism is real and it's fine.
Hey, I've got a ridiculous 80s jacket on. Oh,
this guy just like is used to walking into venues where everybody shows up from Long Island, all due respect to Long Island, and just the idea of somebody on stage saying like safe space with like a little bit of like lilt, as if it's like, we're on the same. And he must be used to like, I remember at one point, Benjamin and I and a couple of guys in Boston wrote for Anthony Clark. Do you remember him? He was a stand-up. And
I don't remember him.
Sort of southerny stand-up who was from Boston. And we wrote a joke, Pepsi Schmepsi, for him. I think that was the joke, and it just felt like he wasn't comfortable saying it. Nobody wanted to hear that. It was completely. But so what's interesting to me about like what you do, and this is what I was getting at with the different sort of like platforms that exist now, even like Adult Swim, where you would have 10-minute shows, like that didn't exist on TV 15, 20 years ago, really. And
right.
And there's so many different ways in which to reach an audience that you can be very big in a community of people and have a huge career, and to provide a platform so that, sort of more mainstream stuff can see you. So you end up acting in, big films.
Yeah.
That to me seems like it's created a whole host of opportunities, and we just have much better comedy and entertainment, broadly speaking, because of it.
Yeah. And we keep figuring out different ways of doing it. This is a new way of doing it, which is we can do a night where our audience is sent, mostly our audience can go out wherever they, in the 120 cities on Wednesday, and spend this communal experience, almost like when you go out and do a live show, be around similar-minded people. And some, like Rolling Stone, was like, why didn't they just cut this up into little small bits and put it on Adult Swim? Well, the evidence is that hundreds or whatever, tons of people came out to be together, and they all had this fun, different experience. It's like, it proved its own point that it worked, and that it did feel like a movie to see with an audience. And that's kind of not, comedies, I feel like we forget that they're really fun to see in a room together and play off each other's reactions to it. And more, we always say, like, you got to go see Skyfall, you got to go see Batman in the theaters because of all the visual effects. But I think comedy is when they're funny, and that's becoming a problem as well. But
Skyfall sucked.
Are fun to see with a group of people. So.
Oh man, I remember the Skyfall saga.
Yeah,
Jesus
no, it was
Christ.
an ugly time for me.
I finally get time to.
I was mad. I was mad for a long time. It kept me out of the theaters.
Get to go out.
This is the first movie I've been excited about since then because I'm so afraid.
Skyfall was.
See, I always go see the Mission Impossible movies in the theater because those they're very silly, but they deliver on what you want to see on the big screen. Tom Cruise jumping out of buildings and stuff.
Let me ask you this: what kind of comedy? You say Mystery Science 3000. What else were you into when you were young? And then dovetail 2-part question: does it hold up in your mind? Just comedy, just broadly speaking. Like my sense is that comedy does not is not durable. And I'm thinking like even the stuff that I made, I look at and I'm like, that's not funny anymore. It's not even remotely funny.
I just want to know.
Comedy holds up that well. Generally, sorry, I did interrupted you.
Sorry,
please.
I just want to know who that Maniscalco bit was even supposed to be for. Like the teenagers watching MTV.
Yes, he made a little Nas X reference.
It's just not funny to them. Like, and then if these kids think you're old and lame and don't laugh at you, then you're like, oh, triggered much, you snowflakes.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of issues with that, but
those kids were fucking triggered.
Go ahead.
I think there's a little bit of nostalgia and comfort in watching things that. I could probably watch Spinal Tap a couple times a year just because it's so entertaining and it's so meaningful to me. I mean, people ask like what your influences are, and it's like, well, I was just a kid living in the 90s, in 80s and 90s in Pennsylvania. I had access to what everybody else had access to, but definitely Spinal Tap, definitely The Simpsons, Saturday Night Live, early Conan O'Brien. I was just like your average comedy nerd. The Zucker brothers. I mean, what was better than the Naked Gun movies?
Right.
Those maybe you're a little older than me and that didn't kill for you, but for me, I was just at the right age where that stuff was just like more important to me than almost anything for a little bit. It was like massive and I cared about it for, whatever reason. Just really resonated with me.
Why do you think comedy doesn't hold up in the same way?
Well, certainly, like a lot of comedy that's very relevant to the moment. If you're going to watch an old episode of Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, there's probably not a lot of reason to do that. Or your show, whatever, any show that's talking about the news is not going to be that interesting. And comedy is mostly about surprising you, and it's like watching a baseball game that you've seen already. There's not a lot of reason to do that. But the first time a joke hits, it's usually the best time because you're not expecting it. And so I guess that's why it might not age well. But some stuff ages just fine.
Yeah.
I think we tried to make Tim and Eric as a sort of like an ageless thing.
Right.
Because it was a nefarious, it was a nebulous kind of look to it, like it looked like it could have been made 15 years ago or 30 years ago or what, but even that, I could look back on that and go, oh, this feels dated. And I didn't think it would, but of course it does. Like everything feels dated at some point. It seems like impossible to avoid that.
Well, the movie is Mr. America. Folks can go to MrAmericaFilm.com right now and
in the United States right now. Unfortunately, the United States and Canada, we're working on some international deals. But I'm sure you have some international listeners, and
they can definitely use like some type of proxy. And I have a feeling that they could go in and
these people know how to get around that.
Oh, they know how to get around all of that. Believe me, Tim.
But don't torrent it.
Yeah, that's right. Or at the very least, if you do, send a check to Tim.
Yes, direct.
Tim, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Big fan. Can't wait to see the movie. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Sam. Great talking to you. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Hopefully. Bye.
Just thinking of the relevance of Bill Maher asking Pauly Shore whether or not he supported PNTR with China or something.